damaged convention of corresponding assembled tonight. Only way to go. Have you noticed my wounds and bruises here? No, yeah, oh yeah, here around my nose, yeah. What do you suppose I have? That's my accident, right. You know, there's no way I can explain anything like that. People look at me, come on. Well, you see, man, we're hanging around here tonight, and we invented this new drink. It's called 3 parts ether, a little rum, and you light it. Ooh, yeah. Anyway, it's not true that Richard Pryor was smoking bass. Not true whatsoever. He was drinking rum. I have a great deal of admiration for Richard Pryor, and I know that he's accepting my jokes with his great sense of humor. We sure hope he gets well, because we can need happy black man is something we need. So, how about a round of applause to Richard Pryor? Terrible. I've been treated so unfairly by the press, you know, all these terrible images going around about my character, that it's kind of hard to live down. Actually, what did happen to my forehead, I was body surfing about 2 days ago, and it was kind of sea of glass sort of situation. Suddenly, someone over in Japan sent a signal that finally got there. 2 big waves in a row, and you've all been through that, haven't you? What I've been doing for the last 8 months is going around the country, acting as an intelligence agent, checking out what's going on. Going to the Southeast, Texas, Northeast, Midwest, Bible Belt, Canada, to Canada, Vancouver, Washington, Alaska, Hawaii, and there's a lot of interesting things going on out there. Number one, the difference between East and West is incredible. I'm sure you've heard it said many times, but for the last 4,000 years, human civilization, human intelligence, human freedom, human humor, human evolution has been moving in that broken line from east to west, so that when you go back east, you're actually going back in time and down in intelligence. It all has to do with spin. The farther you get away from the planet Earth, you know, when you get there high, you look down, when you get so high that you look down on the planet and see this little ball, beautiful little purple and cloudy blue ball spinning, you realize the spin of the earth is the key thing. And the spin of the earth, it goes from west to east, so that the easy way, the momentum way, the inertia way, the lazy way is to just let everything take you back east. Well, and it is back. Now listen, if you want to move forward in the future, if you want to create the future, if you want to move into new options, hang out on the frontier where the individuals exist. That frontier today, of course, is the Pacific Coast of the United States. In particular, is Southern California. I have to assume that I have in this room tonight the highest flying, fastest moving, most intelligent, changeable hope addicts in the world, correct? Hey, where's my gadget to make the slide? It's on the floor. Okay. Got it, man. Yeah. Oh my God. Well. See, you can get this point of view. See there? There's New York. There's the Bible Belt. And then Here's San Diego and Los Angeles. Can you handle that? It's absolutely true that if you want to define a species, the number one thing you use in biology to define a species is localization, habitat. The habitat the species inhabits tells you almost everything about the Now, when I go back to places in the East like Washington B.C. and Soviet Manhattan, I mean, they still think the way they did 200 years ago. They have those enormous buildings in Washington B.C. made of concrete and marble. They've been there for 200 years. Well, naturally, if you're surrounded by a building like that, you're going to think that way. That whole system in Washington was developed about 200 years ago when it took like 2 weeks to go by horse from Boston to New York and to Washington. So it's totally antiquated. Places like Buffalo, New York. Can you believe Buffalo, New York? I mean, I go there and say, my friends, Buffalo is an intelligence test you flunked. And you're going to stay here and repeat Buffalo 1A until you catch on. And you don't have to live. Actually, they hunch up and in the winter they push themselves along. They don't know what it's like to bounce around and surf around and perform service solar radiation. They activate, electrify, energize the human nervous system. Correct? Correct. Well, I practice a very unusual and sometimes risky profession. It's my job to go around the country and to kind of step into these primitive towns back east. And I tell them things they've never heard before. I, of course, basically, perennially, always I'm preaching disrespect for authority. I'm preaching total acceptance of yourself, discovery of yourself, indulging of yourself. I love that word, self-indulgence, boy. That makes those Eastern rabbis and priests and ministers go green with it. You're not supposed to indulge yourself. You're supposed to indulge the president and the bishop. So what's all this talk about? Yeah. Anyway, when I was a cadet in Space Academy, they told us that when you're assigned to a primitive planet like this one, heavy duty, 1G, 1 gravity, where you spend 75% of your time lifting your body, crawling like a slug or a snail, hanging out to a barnacle on the bottom of an 8,000-mile atmosphere swamp, but they think that's hot stuff. Back in Space Academy, they said, listen, when you're working a frontier planet like that, always go to the frontiers. Always go to the last ecological niche that's filling up, where the new arrivals, and then it's from there that you can assemble the migrants that come from all the other continents and all the other territories in the old worlds. I make a lot of fun of adults, but I must give credit to great credit to our fast-moving, restless, itchy-footing parents, our great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers, who I don't care why they came over here, whether they were Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto or they were dumb Irish peasants starving in the peat bogs. I don't care why they were smart enough to know that you don't stay back there and fight over the old turf, but you move into the open frontier. And in the open frontier, you'll find people like yourself that are willing to start something new, because you can never start anything new in an old place. Place determines pace. It really, different genes for different scenes. I predict to you, 5,000 years, we'll come paying resort visits back to this planet. You'll be zapping in like Disneyland, and Ralph Nader will be the forester in charge of the planet Earth. And 5 years from now, they'll still the nasty, mean old paranoid men with beards and drag and tear around Iran fighting about the devil. That's never going to change. And, on the other hand, if you want change, this is the coast, this is the frontier. Everybody knows it. And sometimes I'm not totally popular. Of course, when I go east and talk this way, there's a loyal contingent of dopers in every city in the country. So they all come out. They haven't heard anything funny said for maybe months or years. So they come out happily. But good time is had by all. But the reviewers are really terrible back there because they simply, don't understand. They say, for example, they're worried about earthquakes. What are you talking about earthquakes? We don't call them earthquakes. We call them earth waves. What are you, primitive, superstitious savages afraid of a little hole in the ground? I mean, come on. We don't call them tremors, we call them vibrations. We don't call it the San Andreas Fault, we call it the San Andreas Opportunity. Anyway, I tell you, every time Barbara and I go east of the San Andreas line, we really feel nervous because, my God, if the great unzipping took place, we want to be on the surfboard of California when it bobs and slips and slides up into the Pacific. We don't want to be trapped down in the Bible Belt when the Gulf of Mexico submerges Chicago, Illinois. My wife and I spend a lot of time with scientists. Boy, there's a whole new generation of young scientists. I'm sure there are a lot in this room tonight. Kids that were long hairs in the 60s, and totally damaged their brains in the 60s, so they're totally free, open. They can run their brains like calculators, not fucked up with the Judeo-Christian superstitions, They can actually see what's going on. And they're coming out with incredible new, every branch of science now, people the age of 30 to 40 who've been through the 60s and their 70s are blossoming out and they're coming out with these incredibly new theories which are changing all our perceptions of human nature, human evolution. And I'm kind of playing around tonight. I have, as you know, I can really spin out new ideas. Back at Space Academy, I was one of the top in my class with RPMs. RPMs, that's revelations per minute. On a package show in Buffalo not long ago, I sprayed, ricocheted, strafed, and strobed an audience with over 200 new ideas in 90 minutes. The next day, the critics said I rambled. Don't deny rambling, baby. You have to master brain damage 1A before you can. I should introduce you a very technical note. Well, anyone that's ever been high has run into a navigational problem which is called short-term memory loss. I want a round of applause for short-term memory loss. Start off with your family and friends, and you're out to the movies, and you're kind of goofing and driving along, and pretty soon you're some 20 miles away. Where are we going? Oh, yeah, the movies, right, yeah. Nobody gets upset. Actually, all the scientists are trying to prove, they're all trying to prove that altitude velocity is dangerous. Drugs try to prove that anything that makes you feel good, makes you feel smarter, got to be something wrong with it. It's the Judeo-Christian ethics, my friend. They want you to believe that feeling good is part of a great economic situation, and that for every little tremor of pleasure, there's got to be matched by a pain. And God is like some accountant in the sky, and every time, you have a moment of feeling good, you don't overdraw your pleasure account. Or that Jehovah will bust your ass and you'll burn hell forever. I mean, that's heavy duty. They're always loving to find something dangerous about feeling good and getting smart and being free. You're not supposed to feel good and get smart and be free. Now, there's no denying that there is such a thing as short-term memory loss. What was I talking about? But the answer to that is, make notes. So I always carry, naturally, you're right. Simple survival, right? No, but you're like me, when I get a little high, go out to dinner or to a party, at least 10 times during the night I solve all the mysteries of the universe, don't you? And then the trouble is, the next morning, you say, what was on? It's wonderful, isn't it? So, now I take notes. All the writing I do and have done for the last 5 or 10 years has come from moments of elevation, moments of high altitude. It's got to be that way, Hey, I can really see what's going on here, The first time, my friends, that some high priest of the two-footed clan said, hey man, get off 4 feet, get on 2 feet, climb a tree. Nice up here, the natives come through here, now but it's safer up here. The lions can't get you, the tigers can't get you, the ants can't get you, piss on them. And there's some other high people over there, so you wave to them, so you get to talk back and forth. High people, high altitude people begin to get their own language, from that, it moved on. So anyway, problem with immediate memory loss is the higher you are, and the faster you're going, naturally, you don't remember, A Street to B Street, and so forth, as you would if you were pulling yourself along down here. I could make a case for this proposition that throughout human history, there have always been women and men who have had what used to be called mystical experiences, visionary experiences, fasting in the desert, or maybe they eat some funny root or plant or mushroom or something. Right, there you go, yeah. Robert Gordon Watson and Roger Heim, the great Harvard ethnobotanist, and Heim was a great mycologist, mushroom expert in France. They did a long study which they came out with the proof to satisfy them that most of the great religions in human history developed from people that stumbled onto some root, plant, vine, vegetable, and so forth. And when that happens, of course, your brain speeds up so that in 1 hour, 4 or 5 hours, you're running through the whole history of the evolution. You go back, your conception, you go back to the original thing in life, you spin through, you go into the future, you see what's going to happen. But the problem is, next morning they say, hey man, what happened? Well, they didn't have the language for it, there was no vocabulary for it, they weren't prepared for it, and you forgot too. So, I'm convinced that more and more people today are convinced of the fact that the whole thing is laid out in the human brain and the human DNA, that the past and the future is written there, it's blueprinted, and the problem is that DNA doesn't want us to see too far, because if we see too far in the future, too far in the past, we might get a little freaked out and not feel punch the clock and put things going from day to day. In the past, because of poor transportation technology, There wasn't what we got going in this room, what it had going in Southern California for the last 10 or 15 years, what it had going in the whole country during the 1960s. It's called swarming. See, if one woman in Persia had an illuminating, incredible visionary experience, and then a man over in Greece had one, and maybe a year later someone in eating mushrooms in Germany had one, there's no way they could share their visions. There's no way they could compare notes. So they were marked people. Sometimes they were made holy people. Sometimes they were thrown in the equivalent of mental hospital and so forth. But in the 1960s and 70s, more and more people, 10 million people dropped acid. Now we got 45 million smoking grass now. This process of swarming, of a new vocabulary develops. So I think it's always been that way in human history. I think in a way all of science is simply taking notes to cover yourself for immediate memory loss, because we know. We've all been at that point where you see exactly where it came from and where it's going, and that's one of my functions in the last 20 years, taking notes and passing on notes to remind people where we came from. So look, I'm going to run you through some of these slides, and then we'll decide which ones you want me to talk about. I got a lot of things I can talk about. This is a little story about aphrodisiacs, and those are drugs of the 1980s. Yeah, drugs of the 1980s. Oh yeah, that's a genetic runway. I talked about that, running from east to west. Notice how California split off the rest of the... The lips designed by my wife Barbara, it's a little logo or model. The point of the lips that it represents is I try to portray in every public appearance or in every book that I write, I try to take everyone through the entire history of evolution, from the beginning to this cycle, beginning of the next one. This is the cover of a new book I have just come out called The Game of Life. The lips, of course, represent the first stage of evolution. As amoebas or unicellular creatures, when we first began life on this planet, we were, our neurotechnology was simply floating and sucking. And we were born as little babies. When a little baby, as soon as he's born, she's born, can't handle gravity, can't lift up her head and so forth. It's on the marine arms of her mother, and all a little tiny infant can do is float and suck. Now, I have nothing against floating and sucking. Yeah. Nowadays, right, you read my book. I have 24 diplomas, divinity degrees, and so forth in this book for the 24 stages of evolution, both of the species and for an individual, if you want to take the whole trip. And the first diploma or license in the book is a license to float and suck like an amoeba for 1 hour a day. More than that gets a little noodly, but it's up to you. And the center of this diagram represents, of course, the end point of evolution at our particular galactic stage. It's that magnetic center in the center of the galaxy. It's the gravitation that's sucking everything in. Scientists call it the black hole. And I never understand why scientists, I know why, because they're male machos from the 19th century, and they try to make everything competitive, they try to make everything dangerous, they try to make evolution something that's beyond our control. We're helpless, infant victims, grains of sand in the great ocean of evolution. Baloney, listen. We're always, if you're smart enough to understand it, you can always put yourself at the hinge of evolution. The hinge of evolution moves. We could have had this meeting 100 years ago here. They were, 200 years ago, they were just clam digging Indians here, right? The hot places back then were Brook Farm and all those shaky-dakey Quaker places in New York State, where people got bored with the New England Puritan stuff, went out to Pennsylvania and to New York State, started Brook Farm experiments in communal living. Everything that was going on in the 60s was going on then, migrating. So this black hole in the center is the black hole in the center of the galaxy. We're told that we're sitting around here whining and dining in sophisticated Huntington Beach, California. We're hurtling about 50 miles a second through space being sucked, slurped into the great mouth of the center of gravity. Now, science will try to tell you that's dangerous, that it's a horrible place. Why? Gravity is so strong. As you get close, you get pulled into the black hole. Let's call it black hole. We like to call it violet hole. I get pulled into this gravitational center. Atoms, electrons are stripped off atoms. Everything is crunched and compressed. They make it sound as though it's, as a horrible elevator squeeze. Well, actually, what's really happening is all these solar systems are moving towards the center of the galaxy, and the ones that can keep surfing that wave, the ones that catch that wave and surf it, and we can do it in our lifetimes in these bodies, because we're on the way, are we moving? Boy, the rocket of human migration just taken off. It took off with Apollo, and that wave is there for anyone in this room. We can get to the center of the galaxy in our lifetime, and when you get close to the center of the galaxy, it's not going to be a disastrous whirlpool of negativity and void. It's going to be the fastest moving, highest flying, most erotic, good-looking people in the world, the galaxy, that are going to be moving, exchanging, telling funny stories as we get sucked step by step. Hey, you see, there's a tremendous conflict in evolution today because, as you know, for about a century, Charles Darwin, his theory, there's a straight male macho rape theory of evolution. The survival of the strongest and the smartest, according to that theory. You can understand there were these Englishmen, Wallace, Huxley, Charles Darwin 100 years ago. They were sent down here as evolutionary agents, as we were sent down to perform certain functions to keep this great game of life going and moving upward faster and higher into more beautiful connections. They were sent down as robots to do the same thing. Their job was rather interesting. The job of Charles Darwin was to act as a genetic hitman, to shoot down the theory of evolution and creation, which had been fucking people's heads up for 2,000 years. I've heard of it, to the Judeo-Christian Bible theory of Genesis. I mean, I know that a fast-moving, high-flying 21st century audience like this would find it hard to believe that in the late 20th century, even in advanced zones like North America, there were still millions and millions of people who read and believed the version of creation and evolution according to this book, Genesis, the Bible. I mean, pick up the Bible and read the first 2 or 3 chapters and talk about a horror comic book. I mean, that would be banned on Saturday morning TV, really. You know that theory? The whole thing was created by a male macho named Jehovah. He made this, he made that, he made the earth, he made the sky, he made them like that in 6 days. The 7th day he rested, and then right out front, Jehovah is self-confessed, mean, bad-tempered, paranoid, mafia, capo, condominium owner. Hey, he makes Adam. He says, hey, Adam, I made you. I feel sorry for you, Adam, so I'm going to give you a woman. I said, what is a woman, sir? A woman. I'm going to take a rib out and I'm going to give you a woman. A woman is to serve you. Yeah. Can you believe that played in the Bible Belt in the 20th century? Then you know how the comic book story goes. Joe walks around and says, now, I want you to be very happy and comfortable and secure in this garden, but there are certain food and drug regulations here. There's this tree here, and the fruit of this tree you are forbidden by. It's a controlled substance. You are forbidden to in any way ingest, sniff, smoke, or absorb this, because if you do, the blinds will fall from your eyes, and you'll see through good and evil, and you'll become a god like me. You don't become a god like me, do you? Adam said, no, sir. And this tree over here is another controlled substance. Thou shalt not, under the pain of an FDA, DEA bus, you shall not absorb the fruit of this tree, or you will attain the secret of immortality, and you'll live forever and become a god like me. You don't do that, do you? Adam said, no, sir. Now, I'm sure all the women and most of the men in this audience, know the true story there, that Eve never bought that story at all. The whole Judeo-Christian trip is totally miserable male macho, as you know. They lay all the sin and trouble on poor hip-wiggling Eve, right as that means. That saucy, sassy little Eve that got poor square trick John out of all that trouble. Well, that's not true at all. As soon as Jehovah jumped in his squad car and went back to headquarters, he went over to that tree. She looked at that fruit, she smelled it, she tasted it, she tasted it again. Adam, baby, you gotta try this one. Then you know how it goes. The first narcotics bust in history. Jehovah came bursting into the Garden of Eden without a search warrant. And talk about a hanging judge. That old senile guy in Texas gave me 30 years for 2 roaches that somebody else planted in my car. He was a pussycat compared to the Jehovah. Jehovah says, to the woman you will bear your children in suffering and pain. And he said to the man, the enmity between you and the woman, and you will live in thistles and thorns. I mean, that's not a civil liberties organization, that Judeo-Christian thing. Well, anyway, to go back to this represents, of course, botanical wisdom or DNA Gaia wisdom. Darwin and Huxley had this job. They had to call it the new theory of evolution, which would get rid of this comic book narcotics agent. Let's not have any more gods who are condominium owners. No more gods that are hanging judges. I tell you, we won't have any gods whatsoever. The whole thing is chance. The whole thing is accident. Now, I know you'll find this hard to believe, but in the universities, even here in California, in the late 20th century, they still teach and preach this incredibly male macho theory of evolution. According to the theory currently taught, life on this planet was started, 3.5 billion years ago, in the Precambrian slime. And one Saturday night, there were a bunch of methane molecules hanging around with some ammonia molecules. And they invited over some hydrogen girls, some oxygen boys. Terrible thing happened. A lightning bolt hit the place, and they all began to copulate. Terrible accident, although, and then to compound the mischief, we would still be wonderful little unicellular creatures in the bottom of the ocean, except that as we split and split and split, there were copying errors, carbon smudges, goofs, glitches, mistakes. And every 10,000 mistakes, one made a man bigger and stronger, bigger fangs, bigger claws, bigger and that, and he pushed the other one aside and so forth, so he got his sperm to keep the whole thing going, and on and on. In other words, the neo-Darwinian orthodox theory of evolution is 3.5 billion years of mistakes leading up to bigger and better rape. And even what more insulting and even more personal to our situation right here in this room, the theory that is taught in our current textbooks about how you were conceived and how I was conceived. I mean, it's totally ludicrous. According to the current theories, when your father made love to your mother, he introduced into her reproductive system around 500 million spermatozoa. Now, first of all, I want to call your attention to that sleazy term, reproductive system. See what it makes the woman? It makes the woman into some like dumb Hong Kong sweat factory slave worker. You're not even a producer, you're a reproducer, you know? Well, I wasn't reproduced, I'm an authentic original. I was created in my mother's recreational system. I remember exactly that. Actually, I was conceived on a Saturday night after an officers' dance in West Point, New York. My father was an officer, and went with my mother to a party. General Douglas MacArthur was the head of the place then. My mother, George Patton, he was then Colonel George Patton, got fresh with my mother. That meant he tried to seal her up. She escaped his wily clutches, went home with my father. They went upstairs and to the bedroom of the officer's quarterhouse they had. My father was mildly alcoholic, went down and mixed himself a drink. My mother knelt down in front of the bed and prayed to the Lord Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary. My father came upstairs, took off his army uniform, including his BVDs, and performed the copulatory rituals of that Yakima early period of our pre-Adamic culture, you know. Anyway, I remember that moment when suddenly I was there with 400 or 500 million other sperm. Now, according to the textbook, being male macho, playing fields of eating Englishmen, you know, according to the textbook, as soon as the 500 million sperm are there, then begins the biggest mark spit Olympic swing race in history. Bang! 500 million sperm doing Australian call and flashing their tails. And the first one that gets there, Miss Egg says, "Hey, move over, baby. I'm gonna knock you up." That's not the way it happened at all. I remember being in my mother's recreational system, and I sure there were a lot of sperm around, a lot of jocks were running around, but I realized that there was no hurry. Something inside of me said, "Cool it, baby. Go with the flow." And slowly, I kept being pulled up the fallopian tube. Hey, is that a dirty word, fallopian tube? I tried on television the other day. The leak tube. Damn it. Came up to fallopian tube, suddenly came around the corner, and there she was. Miss Egg. Now, the egg is 50,000 times larger than the sperm. The egg is many times more intelligent than the sperm because it's the egg that decides. Come on. It's the egg that decides. You don't think it's all based on Macho Ray, do you? It's she doesn't roll over, you know, first big jock that comes along. She's stunning, you know, because it's the crucial hinge of evolution. It's ironic, although evolution works with millions and millions of individuals in a gene pool, still, it's always the individual choice of one Miss Egg selecting from 500 million sperm which one she wants to invite in. Give her as much credit as any woman in this room, right? So, she's running down. Also, the egg doesn't make her final division until after the sperm is inside her boudoir. When she waits, takes them out, straights the chromosomes and checks out those 23 shiny chromes, and then decides at that time, she looked at me and she said, "You ready to go all the way?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Okay, you're the one I want. Slurp." That's my conception of my conception. Okay, well, should we go into drugs of the 80s? By the way, I feel I should pay respect and gratitude to an old friend of ours who took time to come up here and be with us tonight, Lieutenant Purcell of the police. Thanks. Lieutenant Governor Mike Curb, hi, how are you? There's Carol Burnett over there. She's a little loaded on mushrooms, so I won't bother Carol. Well, in order to understand the drugs of the 80s, you must understand about the history of drugs. You know that this is we're now coming into the third generation of drugs. Anytime a new technology comes along, the first generation is crude, it's inefficient, it's rather dangerous, it's unpredictable. The second generation is much improved. The third generation, to begin to iron out the glitches, and it's in the nature of every technology that humanity develops, that the first generation is kind of risky and wild. Later generations, like computers, you know, the first computer
was as big as this room, and crime smoked, and you had to put in oil over. The second generation was about the size from here around there. Now the computers, you carry them around and talk about computers. They could be, it's always that way with the technology. Subsequent generations, they become more powerful, and they become more precise, pinpoint precision in location and duration to get exactly what you want. And that's true, of course, of airplanes and true of automobiles, and it's now true of drugs. The first generation of brain-activating, intelligence-increased aphrodisiac, love everybody drugs, open up your brain drugs, they've been around for centuries and thousands of years. Matter of fact, there's a good case to be made that all recorded history, as I said before, is simply notes jotted down for immediate memory loss. The first book of the Hindu Bible, the Vedas, which is considered the original, basic, classic work of human metaphysics, the first line, the first paragraph, the first page, the first chapter of that book is an ode to soma, which is the drug they use. They think it's probably a combination of hashish or opium, something like that. Anyway, for thousands of years, every time a civilization got to a point where they had a breathing spell, for just a brief time, they were freed from the pressure of starvation, disease, invasion, revolutionary rest. Then people had a chance to look around, catch their breath, ask the great navigational questions. Where are we going? Where did we come from? It's not just brute survival. What's the whole thing about? To do that, you have to go in. In order to go in, you have to have the locomotion. You have to have the biochemicals that move you through the enormous realm of your brain, because you're never going to go, no matter how far you go out in the universe, humanity, you're never going to go any farther than you can go within in your own brain. So it's obvious that the trip within has got to come first. So most of the great literature, we've been taught, history is taught by, establishment people that don't really want us to know. If you read a history book, it's written by, it's written by Marine Corps people. You think the history of humanity was a series of battles, Gettysburg, Waterloo, and all that. Actually, the history of a species, of our species, the wars aren't important at all. It's the technology of transportation and communication and the use of brain-activating stimulus and the relations between the sexes. Those are the four things. Now you need the transportation to move you around the world so you can find exactly the people you want to hang out with and make love with. Communication's got to be better because you got to get smarter and smarter, and the brain-opening drugs allow you to make the fusions more powerful, more intense, more funny, and more ecstatic. So the history, you could write the history of the universe, the history of, of the human race, in terms of the drugs that were used and how they were used. You know that most English literature in the 19th century and the 18th century was drug use. All those poets from the Romantic poets, Shelley, Swinburne, Keats, they were all on drugs. You know that the greatest American the greatest American writer, we don't even know much about him here because he's worshipped in France. He's considered like one of the greatest writers of all time. Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. Was a doper. Louis Stevenson was a doper. You go down the line. So anyway, I'm talking about the first generation of botanicals, plants, vegetables, which are sent by the plant kingdom, or why do they call it kingdom? Notice how real much it is. Why do they call it plant kingdom, right? Should be the plant queendom, right? I don't know. Anyway, we in our mammalian macho chauvinism, we think that mammals are smarter or better than plants because we get to move around in freeways and highways and the plants just kind of stay there. But actually, the more you think it over, mammals are simply cargo vessels carrying around, billions and trillions of species of plants, Some marine in Saigon gets a gonorrhea germ there, and 3 days later he's brought it back to a high school girl in Kansas. I mean, She wants us to be moved around. She wants variety. She wants seeds spread and disseminated because she likes change, she likes surprise, she likes improvement, and of course she likes us to become smarter and travel, better communication, and the intelligent use of drugs the way to become smarter. Anyway, that's the first generation of drugs that have been around for a century. It's the hidden story. They never spoke of it, but Sherlock Holmes was there taking his cocaine. If you know where to look, you'll find George Washington, of course, made all his money on hemp farming. And they gave instructions as to how to collect the female plants. And you don't collect female plants for hemp, my friends. The second generation of brain-activating drugs came along in the 1960s. Actually, give credit where credit is due. The great boom in second generation so-called synthetic drugs, although they still come from the botanical. The second generation of drugs we owe entirely to a group of wonderfully patriotic, kind of crazy, flaky, freaky Americans in the 1950s who were going through the Amazon, through the South Pacific, to the South Africa. Anybody they could find a root, a vine, a powder, anything to bring back to Bethesda, Washington laboratories to perform experiments to see if they could get some new kind of drug to fuck our heads up. I'm talking about the CIA. Have a round of applause for the CIA! We wouldn't be in this room today if the CIA hadn't started its LSD experiments. I was just up spending a couple of days with Ken Kesey last week. Hey, Ken Kesey! He's in fabulous shape. He's going to get there on his farm. He's got his family. He's got Ken Babbitt's partners, and they got their families, and they're just saying high and loaded, and they're cheerful, and Kesey told me again the story that he was working his way through Stanford as a kind of a straight arrow, wrestling. He was a jock, you know, a farm boy, very red, white, and blue, straight arrow. And the Veterans Administration, they were doing experiments on some kind of a drug, and they told him to pay $50 to take this drug. So he said, sure, he's broke. So that would be one of those CIA projects where they were trying out LSD on people. Kesey got a job at the hospital, and the first night on duty, he stole about half of the closet filled with all these drugs. And the rest is history. Now, the second generation of drugs, I think of us as being like the first developers of the airplane. We were at Harvard University, and it was a wonderful group of far-out, outcast scientists and philosophers there. The reason, see people like Aldous Huxley, Allen Ginsberg, Baba Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, Alan Watts. How about Alan Watts? Ralph Mixner, right, yeah. John Lilly, yeah, John was there. Oh, he wasn't at Harvard. He's number 3, comes the third generation. He's way ahead of us. Yeah, right. Okay, we were very naive, you know. We had this funny, crazy, mixed up notion. It's a Wilbur Orville Wright notion. We were convinced in our hearts. They laughed at us. We were convinced that human beings could fly. Hey, I personally always wanted to fly. When I was a kid growing up, you know, I was 5 or 6 years old, and I would study all the adults, the grown-ups. I studied all my aunts and my uncles and the priests and the teachers, and I'd listen to them talk, and I'd, boy, these monkeys don't know, they don't have a clue. I mean, they don't have a clue. Nobody listens to each other. They repeated the same old stories. They never had to know anything. I said, my God, what? So then, I can remember very early, like 6 years old, and one of my big uncles turned to me and said, well, Timothy, bye. What are you going to be when you grow up? I said, I'm not going to be a grown-up. You're a smart-ass kid, not going to be a grown-up. You got to be a grown-up. What are you going to be? I said, I'd rather be an angel. He said, well, what do you mean an angel? I said, well, it's an angel. is someone who lives up there and has wings and can fly down here and can be a guardian of people like you. So I'm going to come down and be a guardian angel for poor grown-ups that don't have a clue. Anyway, we were developing this second generation of drugs at Harvard. It was really primitive stuff, you know. It was like Kitty Hawk. We'd get these people, you know, up there. My God, there's Alice Huxley up there. Alice, watch that tree. Hey, Alice is flying. Hey, come on, hey, come back, Alice. Oh my God, we lost Alice. Oh, there you go. We moved. In those days, every person we got high and brought back, it was a victory. We had our radar trained on. We were just getting loose on the clouds for a while. We sent something up for him, but we were bringing him down. There comes Richard Alpert. There came Alan Watts. There comes, oh boy, it was a incredible experience. We were kind of dumb, though. We were very naive and romantic. We thought, in our innocence, that every human being would want to fly. We discovered, to our dismay, there were a lot of people out there that definitely would rather be dump trucks, garbage trucks, Sherman tanks, and not want to join the Air Force. And there were a lot of people that got caught away in the trendy spirit of the moment. You know, the last kid you block fly, so a lot of kids that really weren't equipped to fly, that kind of went along with it. But still, as I look back on those wonderful years of the 60s, and you study the statistics, the so-called dangers, so-called casualties, never in history has there been a cultural revolution, a total dramatic change in the way people think and act and talk and dress and look and make love, a total revolution in American culture, which was done with laughter, and done with fun, and done with good feeling, minimum. I talk about the danger, yes. We feel badly that any person flew higher, got lost, and crashed, and so forth, because I feel badly for 1 second of anyone feeling the tremendous terror that you feel the first time you leave this heavy planet and you realize you're up there on your own. So, for all of but still, my God, migration and mutation of species is tremendously lethal and fatal. Think of the high percentage of people who died coming across the Great Plains. Think of the high percentage of people that died coming across those ships from Europe in the 16th and 17th and 18th century. And the facts are, the bottom line facts on the danger of psychedelic or brain-activating drugs, the bottom line is that more young people are killed and wounded on one single Saturday night with a combination of booze and motor oil than the entire 20 years that LSD's been used in this country. And of course, you don't hear any talk about LSD casualties these days. Why? More LSD is being used today than in the 60s. All the government reports show that. The sociological studies that show that, the clinic studies report, there's more LSD being used now than ever before. But you know, now they got the pyramids to worry about, right? The reason, of course, is it's like any technology. It's like computers, or it's like telescopes, or anything powerful like that. Those who are genetically designed for it, those who know how to use it, those who can build it into a life of growth, continue to do it, but they do it quietly, don't run it. Well, in the 60s, we got a little boring, It was true that everyone who, cut themselves loose from the tribe, from the game, from the narrow terrestrial situation, got free, got open, could scan the past the future, came running back, said, hey, I just discovered God. Say, yeah, baby, what else is next? Get back in line. Everyone was running around, discovering God. So we cooled it. We realized, yeah, well, that's nice. Now the third generation of mind-activating, brain-activating aphrodisiac drugs is occurring right now, and the drugs of the 80s are going to make the drugs of the 60s look like clumsy grass zeppelins. LSD was a very clumsy drug, you know, particularly the Owsley stuff. Yeah. Oh wow! I'm not knocking it, but it was high altitude, high velocity stuff. You know, one of the white lightnings would have like they never knew. Oh, between 200 and 400 microgram. Yeah. Plus or minus, well, give or take, might be 7. Who knows? Today, as you know, the LSD put out in smaller units so that you may have to take 6, 7, or 8 and build it up, and it gives people, you know, a chance. It gives you that accelerator. It gives you shifting gears, which is you have to build into any system. You don't want to, you know, get in the car, drop the key, and whack! You're going 1,000 miles an hour down the Pacific Coast Highway. You know? So. Like any technology, we're getting cooler, we're getting smarter, we're learning how to shift and brake and navigate better. And yeah, so you're not hearing any LSD casualty stories today because you know, we're all getting pretty smart about that. Now, drugs of the 80s are going to be much stronger, and they're going to be totally precise in the length of time and the circuits of your brain that they turn on. So that instead of just pressing all the buttons at once, you can play your brain like an enormous electronic, bioecstatic organ. See, so say. Now, these little pig numbers, for example, they are an example. They're an auditory stimulant. You drop one of those, and for exactly the length of time of one long playing record, your auditory system is enhanced 1,000-fold. Now you wouldn't want to drop that in Times Square. The yellow ones in the upper right, this is a chemical which is around quite a bit. How many of you ever heard of ecstasy? Yeah, isn't that fabulous? Yeah. Now, I deliberately don't give names, chemical names to these drugs because I've learned from them from the 60s too. When I was a space cadet at the academy, they told us, listen, you get a Medal of Honor on a primitive planet, on a good guy, bad guy, you know, Judeo-Christian, Muslim planet, like planet Earth. You get a Medal of Honor for every victimless crime you invent. I tell you, in the 60s, we invented a lot of victimless crimes. Fast as we discovered a new way to get high, they passed a law against it. You know, we were working with LSD for 6 years before they passed a law against it, so that was kind of an interesting situation. But so I deliberately don't give the chemical names for these items because, you know how it is. If I were to tell you that grapefruit juice and tequila, you know, will make you fuck better, they pass a law against it tomorrow, so. and the mafia will be selling it outside of junior high school, right? And guess who get the blame, right? Yeah. There's no credit or blame here. There's any time millions of people suddenly do something dramatic and dangerous and risky in the teeth of all the establishment, break laws blithely to do something that has something to do with self-improvement or change and so forth. Listen, you don't give anyone credit or blame for that. That's built into the genetic situation. It's time for that to happen. When it's steamboat time, everyone begins to steamboat. When it's backbone time, we all begin to backbone. So it was inevitable that one generation after Hiroshima, you were going to have the first big baby boom generation, affluent, wanting more, didn't want to sell out for Chevrolets and, you know, Elvis Presley stuff. It was inevitable that you were going to have that event. Although people say, do I take any blame? I said, sure, if you want to play the blame game, yeah, I'll be glad to play with you. I'll take all the blame, but I'll take all the credit, huh? Anyway, these yellow numbers called XTC, it's an extraordinary experience with a period of 2 hours and 49 minutes. It turns the human body from this leathery, the envelope which keeps all our ocean waters in. You know, the terrestrial part of our trip is only going to last. We've been mainly water creatures most of the time on this planet. We were amoeba, and then we learned how to sniff calcium, you know. The AMA, that's the Amoeba Medical Association, said, "Warning, mothers and fathers of amoebas, do not let your children ingest calcium because it causes bones to grow." No self-respecting amoeba wants their children to have bones to grow. They'll fly away from home, you never see them again. Then when we all got crowded under there, you know, and the fish thing, a few of us crawled out of the shoreline and began sniffing a dangerous drug called oxygen. You remember that? Hey, life, you know, you can't do that. Life as we know it, shark life can't exist out there, and the solar radiation will kill you, and you know, the oxygen will kill you. So, yeah, right. So, but we spend most of our time under the water. The period that we're going to be mammals, that is crawling around, you know, using muscular power and all that, it's a very brief time in our overall history, and we have to get through the shell of the planet, Earth, and then use it as a launching pad to go out into the ocean of space. We got in the ocean of space then, yeah. So we do have these leathery skins, which are not much fun. I mean, really, you know a dolphin's fin, dolphin skin, you know, it's inches thick, and it's wired. It's wired so that it picks up every little ripple of the ocean, and they send these signals to each other. Whales can send it, you know, several hundred miles. In other words, a dolphin's body is like an 8-foot open vagina penis, totally receptive to everything that's happening, and just slipping and sliding through the water. No wonder dolphins smile, right? But to back to this drug called ecstasy, for a period of 2 hours and 49 minutes, this drug turns the human skin into something the way it was before and will be in the future. It turns the human skin into something that looks like, feels like, touches like, smells like, tastes like, and emits the soft honey perfume of a lotus flower. Now, if you're a woman, imagine yourself a 5'5" lotus flower in a flower bed. If you're a man with a 6-foot tall lotus flower, you have a very interesting experience. And you know it's only going to last for 2 hours and 49 minutes. Unless you want to reload. Well, sometimes I put this side of the board and I give a little lecture on economics. As you know, the United States of America is going through some economic sickness, but the interesting thing is, you know, none of the economists or the hotshot theorists can explain what's going on. They call it a recession or a depression or it's an inflation or stagflation or a reflation. I mean, they simply don't know what's going on. Well, I can tell you what's going on. For the last 20 years, the American people have been forced, because of the ayatollahs and the virtuous, blind, middle-aged minds that run Washington B.C., have been forcing the American people to reach in their pocket and spend $50 to $60 billion a year to import a vegetable which can grow much better here at home. We're told, for example, you know, the number one cash crop now in Hawaii is grass. It's no longer pineapple. In Colombia, the number one cash crop is no longer coffee. It's grass. We're told that the American people put between 10 billion a year to import grass and other vegetables from Colombia. Now, I don't mind that, because the problem is that $8 billion isn't going to go into the pocket of the farmer or the peasant or the local school teacher or the local farmer. It's going to go into, yeah, that's right. It's going to go into the pockets of you know who, the police and the generals. They were trying to legitimize, we call it legalize marijuana in Colombia, because the intelligent Colombians, the economists, and the people that really want the government to go well and they said, "My God, this is the greatest thing since Miami discovered Miami Beach." But they can't legalize it because the military and police won't allow it. We're going to have economic malaise and economic problems in this country until we elect a governor of one state who will be smart enough to say that he will make the great plains of the valleys and central meadows of California green with grass. At that moment, if Californians wouldn't have to pay taxes, you'd get a rebate dividend from your state government of a couple of $1,000s a month because you were smart enough to elect a governor who was smart enough to make money, pass it around. The money's now being made. We've seen it happen. We knew it was going to happen in the 60s. We warned them, don't make the dope illegal, because if you do, it'll become like prohibition. It was laid right out. The alcohol prohibition in the 20s, the same thing happened. The mafia moved in. Gangsters restarted this country, got their act together, and the alcohol prohibition. We warned them, don't do it. You're going to have a black market that'll make Al Capone look like a pussycat. But so that's what happened. They now say that more money is cash is passed around and held in one bank in Miami than in all the Federal Reserve banks the rest of the country put together. And it's all not taxable or not legal. Yeah, these. I'm just going to give you little trips here. Outer space. All right, yeah, I should talk. Here's what I'll do. I'll tell you a little about space and inner space, outer space. See, we are going to leave the planet, like it or not. Some of us are. Not when the swarming. We're going to go. When. The Russians are up there right now. People, I came out of prison, I went around saying, hey, we're going out into space. They say, hey, poor Timothy, spaced out again. Sad case. It's true, I've always been an enemy of gravity. I've always felt that gravity sucks, I admit it. I'm totally prejudiced on this. On the other hand, now the space thing is growing. That's why Star Wars is wonderful, Star Trek, the kids that have watched Saturday morning TV and have learned, our own 6-year-old kid, Zachary, he sees on television, he sees a picture of the planet Earth. He's the first generation in history of 6-year-old kids who can say, that's our planet from the outside. That can dig the incredible importance in the nervous systems of little kids growing up, realizing that there's a spinning thing and we can come back, jump on, we can jump off it. After Apollo made that moon landing, the human destiny was inevitable. And then sometimes people say, even now, oh, come on, everything's so screwed up that it's not going to happen in our lifetime. Well, listen, it's not going to happen in our lifetime, forget it. Because I intend to live forever or die in the attempt. But people still say, oh, come on, you're talking pipe dreams. The Russians have a permanent space base. They've had one for 2 years. At this moment, there are 4 Russians up there. Last week, they brought up a Hungarian astronaut. They call them cosmonauts, and they brought up Czechs. They brought up Poles, East German, and Mongolian. In addition to, they're running guided tours to their Hilton in the sky, and unfortunately, they're not doing it. Well, their robots do. They're doing it to get control because it's obvious that who controls space. Space is the high ground. Who controls space controls the planet. That's why most of the exploration space has been military. And I belong to a group called the L5 Societies and trying very hard to... The address of the L5 Society is very easy. And even though you're stoned out of your mind and you don't even remember where you were tonight, you don't even remember the name of Timothy Leary, you remember this number. And it's 1620. 1620 was the year that the Mayflower, the Pilgrim Mothers and Fathers came over here and started this great American adventure. So 1620 North Park Avenue, we're going to go first class, right? Tucson, Arizona. Write them. But the reason, of course, that we want to go into space is because we gotta have room. We gotta have space. I'm sure most of you share our feeling that you were not designed and evolved and perfected over 3.5 billion years to end up living in insectoid urban cities, are you? My species, and I'm sure you share our genetic background, our species needs room around us. Wolf pack needs 50 square miles. A gopher colony needs 100 square yards. Human beings need a lot of land around them so they can see the sunrise and the sunset and watch the stars and the planets and play the hi-fi loud at night and not get busted by the Turtle Hills Police Department. Now, there are a lot of well-meaning, even a lot of well-meaning hippies from the 60s that to me, being a hippie, being a doper in the 60s meant joy. It meant radiating good things and smiling. It was funny. We discovered that the Judeo-Christian thing is a veil of sorrow and original sin where you're busted at birth, baby, you're condemned to a life of punishment. Fuck it, we discovered it. Get away, This is a Garden of Eden, and so humor, it's funny. The first time we turned on literally hundreds of people to powerful psychedelics at Harvard, and inevitably the first reaction would be these square professors, these ministers of divinity school, serious graduate students. Their first reaction would always be to laugh and to laugh and to laugh. Yeah, isn't it funny? Yeah, boy. They really fuck you up, didn't they? It's funny to be free. Look down at there, it's funny. So I've always seen, and I'll tell you this, I never dug the part of the 60s that was political and militant and mean. There are a lot of people going around in the 60s feeling that America's a terrible place. Sure, there were terrible things going on, but a streak of meanness developed in a lot of people that still, in the 80s, they still go around with big black beards, frowning, looking for sin and looking for trouble, and they have their organic thing, and they're always looking for Japanese seaweed, and they'll only drive a Volkswagen or a Volvo. They think that driving, and they be faster than them. They're not fun lovers, so to me, that's a different species and a different race. Many of these well-meaning Puritans, I call them ecological Puritans. They've got a new morality that makes you feel guilty because you drink coffee, or you don't live in a teepee, It's the same old guilt trip brought back again. So many of these well-meaning, wonderful people say, "How dare you think of leaving the planet Earth, which we've fouled up, and with which we've fouled our nest, and we've shitted it all up, and why you're popping out if you try to just blow off into space in these rocket ships, and leave us down here with all this pollution and so forth, as though we're doing something mean and nasty and terrible because we want to get high and move fast and get free." Now, I have to admit it, I'll say right up front, I am an escape artist. I was wired, fired, inspired, wound up and in and pushed down this planet to get off, to get moving.
All right.
Always been an escape artist. I've never wanted to stay and fight over tenure at Harvard, or stay and fight over, try to grab little local powers. Never made. That made no sense to me whatsoever. One time, I was 44 months in the grasp of the prison officials. They used to move me around a lot. In the 44 months that I was in jail and prison, they moved me about 29 times. And whenever they moved me, they'd have 1 or 2 squad cars, and I'd be shackled and I'd be handcuffed, and they'd put me in a holding cell here. Then they'd all go over, and they'd have the marshals and the sheriffs and the deputy of the guard be talking like, drugs. And be looking over my folder. Prisoner's folder's called a jacket. On the cover of my jacket, in big red letters, it said, "Warning, escape, risk." Right on, yeah. I remember once I was at Folsom Prison. Folsom Prison is below the armpit of the California prison system. And that's a real prison. See, there are about, I think, 20 prisons in the California system, but they're all out in the countries, and they got wire around. They made them look like warehouses or something like that. Folsom Prison, and they call them all the honky-donk, hypey names like colonies, the men's colony, and the men's institution, and the men's reformation, all this bullshit. Folsom is a prison. It was built by granite. It was dug by the Chinese coolies 100 years ago. There's no mental hygiene bullshit about Folsom. You are asked to be weird house there. So, I was there about a couple of weeks, and some of the heavy-duty gang guys come and say, "Hey, Tim, let's start a riot here." I said, "Okay, what do you want to riot about?" "Let's riot for better food and mess up." I said, "Fuck off, man, what are you talking about?" "Well, let's have a strike." "What do we have a strike about?" I said, "Well, let's strike for better movies on Saturday night." I said, "Are you crazy, man? What? I'm not here to improve this prison. Show me a bar. Show me a way we can go down and dig our tunnel. Tell me a time I can hit the fence at midnight with 100 of us. I mean, 10 get through, I'll do it for you. Show me an empty sewer pipe, I'll do it. But don't talk to me about staying down here and improving the prison." Get out! I'm going to tell you a little story now and then kind of dance off. There's certain games that people play all the time, head trips and so forth. I learned a lot of useful security measures dealing with the games that people play, because the way I see it, the way we've always seen it is that, relativity is always changing. You never be sure. From day to day, I'm different, you're different, so there's simply no final absolute. So we're moving on to, I'm never quite sure of anything, And once you start playing with your brain, once you start tampering with your brain, the brain is the final taboo. The body, as you say, you weren't supposed to touch your body. Like if you masturbated, you get hair in your hands, you go to a mental hospital. Or 100 years ago in Victorian England, or Freud in Vienna, the human body, like a strong man was fainting at the side of a young lady's ankle, all that. Well, that's all over. In our time, the taboo work is the brain. You're not supposed to touch your brain. You're not supposed to play with your brain. You're not supposed to use your brain for pleasure. You're not supposed to expose your brain. You're not supposed to talk about your brain, because it's true, it is the final taboo. Because once you start playing with, tampering with, using your brain, you realize that the brain is the key to everything. That, you're either going to spend the rest of your life as a badly paid extra in somebody else's low-budget film, or you're going to learn how to focus and sight your own neurological cameras and script and direct and co-star in the reality movie of your own life. So, so it's true, you have to keep moving, because then if you're a moving target, you're hard to hit.